one sense that we're trying to rewrite history to some degree is terrifying, because it should be, let us learn from history, tell the stories through a new lens, being this is the truth of what happened.
Welcome to the Private Chef podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hannes Henche, and on our show we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome back to the Private Chef podcast. Today we have Jayne Reichert. Welcome to the show, Jayne.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we already had a blast off the record. We were already laughing. So this is going to be
Let's
good.
Let's just run with that.
Yeah, let's go right in. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the kitchen, I guess. Like, is that something that you was nurtured from home, or where does your interest for cooking or the love for cooking come from?
I always loved to cook. As a kid, I loved to cook, but my parents were, you're going to, like, that's not happening. And I grew up on a farm. And so our mom is an amazing cook. Everything came from, like, the garden or from grandpa's farm or whatever. But she did not want to raise us to be home cooks or chefs or anything. But I just always enjoyed it. My background originally was public relations, journalism, with a minor in psychology. And I got into the food
in the kitchen
business through, pardon me?
I said the minor in psychology, that's helpful in the kitchen.
Business. Oh, it is helpful in the kitchen. I have to sometimes reach back and go, oh yeah. But I worked for the sports club company in LA as their catering manager. And I got that by happenstance because a friend who worked with Disney had been called for it. And she said, I don't want this, but you should go. Like, I don't know anything about this. She's like, you throw great parties. You're a great chef or great cook, home cook at the time. She's like, what? I mean, go. So I did. I got the job and quickly decided that like, we need to redo the menus and et cetera, and have it more speak to what was happening during that time, which was nouvelle cuisine and all that type of stuff. So I was constantly in my chef's office. Like, can we do this? Can we change this? Can we do this? Da, 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 da. And then from there, it just sort of, I grew that position into a director role and then into an event planning role. But it always, as I took more steps in my career, all of that stuff was bred out of the food and beverage department. So if I was going to plan a party, I planned the menu, talked to the chef, and then I planned all the stuff that went around the party in regards to the production, et cetera. And it wasn't until I had a job.
So always kitchen centered.
It was always kitchen centered, always food focused. Until I took a position back in Chicago with a lifestyle marketing company. And that had nothing. I had worked with Disney. I say I went from Mickey Mouse to working for Joe Camel and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Couldn't be more opposite. And that had no food or beverage involved in it, right? It was about product placement, what they used to say, sticky eyes on the webs, whatever, all that type of stuff, but no F&B. But I would be in New York arguing with the craft services people about what they were going to serve the Teamsters. And my boss would be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, well, it can't be. And so I decided to retire at 27 and go to chef school, go to culinary school. And so I came back out here to go to the Culinary Academy, and I did that. And then it's been all food, for the most part, all food related ever since then. I did a quick stint back into the event world for a while when everything kind of collapsed here in San Francisco. But now it's been all food driven, kitchen driven. And actually, and even a step into teaching, which if someone had told me a long time ago that I'd be running a culinary school in a resort, I would have said, no, I don't think so. But I loved it. And then that, pardon me? I missed what you said.
No, I was just laughing along.
It is. It's pretty funny.
I think that's, yeah.
That was an amazing experience. And then moving into private chef, as I did do a lot of private work when I was in culinary school. I was in a few kitchens here and there doing the stages that you have to do, etc. But I had a chef throw a plate at me through the pass. And I already had one career, right? I had already had a career. Like, I'm not going to have someone throw something at me. What? And I think you had another gentleman on earlier in a podcast that talked about the kind of sometimes the toxic environment in the kitchen with yelling and screaming and there's chefs that could be at the border patrol. They do a really good job. It could be very intimidating. So I took a job with a family as their personal chef. That's what it was back in the day. It wasn't people had personal chefs, not the shroud of private chef. And that was great. I cooked for them on and off for 8+ years, I think. And then most recently, when I was at the cooking school at Cavallo Point, a chef that I worked with at the sports club company contacted me. He was in the private chef world now in another state, and a gentleman that he cooked for was being traded to San Francisco, and he's like, he needs a chef, and it should be you. And at that time, I was like, I don't think I really want it. I'm like, let me understand if he decides he comes home from a game and he wants 10 people over at midnight, I need to be there. And he's like, well, yeah, that's kind of how it rolls. So I turned that one down and put an intern in that role instead. Or I didn't put her in that role. I referred her to that role. That position actually resurfaced 5 years after I had said no, with the same chef contacting me and saying, you can't say no twice in a row. These opportunities don't come around twice in a lifetime. And so that time I said yes. I walked through the door, and I've been now private chefing for this family, who happens to be an athlete for the last 5 years.
Are there any midnight parties?
No, there's no midnight parties. They are very grounded and down to earth and very private. They're very private. So no, there's no midnight parties. But in your mind, you kind of think of like all these things. And,
so
because it's very. Even though I had worked in LA and I worked like with Hollywood, I was also really, I think, naive in some regard, because it just didn't occur to me that, I don't know, that there was this other elusive type thing happening out in the world that had to do with private chefing or the limousines of this, of that, et cetera. I just always I'm like, well, they're just so-and-so, or it's even the idea, and I hadn't heard this before, and then you had it on your podcast. I was at the farmer's market the other day, shopping from a farmer that I know really well, and there was a person in front of me, a lady in front of me, And she's like, so what is it you do again? Because she was being a little maintenance driven, high maintenance driven. And she's like, oh, I thought the farmer had said, oh, I thought you were a doula. And she's like, oh, no. And she's like, I service the 1%. And I was like, what is that? And then it was funny because you ended up having it on your lead sheet or whatever you want to call that.
Literally the name of it.
Literally the name of it, but I hadn't.
Yeah.
So, I hadn't. I guess I don't think of the people that I've cooked for, the people that I cook for now in that way. I hadn't thought of people in that way. They're just sort of, what's that old saying? They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do.
Well, I do, they. I mean, there's something to it where you may be a little bit disillusioned if you stick around long enough. We're like, oh, they're just human.
Yeah, they're just. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, and hopefully, what I try to look at is I just try to take care of them and my role the same way that I would like to have someone take care of me if I was fortunate enough to be able to have something like that, right? That's just sort of the way I approach it, and sometimes that really works, and sometimes it can hurt a little bit too at times, right? You do something and it's not not acknowledged, or or you go out, you make something like that you are so excited about. You just can't believe how excited you are about it. You went to the farmer's market, you got all these great ingredients, and yay! And you come back and they're like, we're going to eat out tonight. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, I know the pain of that. Sometimes you put in the extra effort and you go the extra mile, you get those extra ingredients, and then, it's like, oh, we didn't plan on that. We're like doing something different.
Right. Which is, that's the territory. It's not, or you make something and like, oh, we don't want that tonight. Can you do pizza? Like, absolutely, I'll be right on that. Let me get the.
Do you also always have some ready to go pizza dough on hand?
I do now, because the teenager in the house really likes pizza. So you always need to have
How is that otherwise, having a teenager there who knows he can pretty much ask for anything he wants?
It's not really like that. They're, like I said, they're very private and down to earth. It's more that, well, I guess actually, I don't think of it like that. It's more that sometimes it's disappointing because you'll make something and the teenager's like,
he'd rather have the pizza.
He'd rather have the pizza. So you're cooking, and it's the complete opposite of way back when I did that, and the kids loved, like, they ate everything. They ate everything from a very young age. They'd come in and be like, Chef, what are we? There's only once that the little girl, she was 8, and she's like, can I just have pasta with the tomato sauce, the fresh tomato sauce? I'm like, yeah, we're doing a dinner party for 16 tonight, but yes, yes. I'll get on that right away. Because because you don't have the option really of saying no. You have to massage it in such a way, but I don't know that when you're, you're not cooking, you're not cooking to your palate, you're cooking to their palate, right? And and what they sort of want at that moment. So you have to be very adaptable and thick-skinned.
Yeah, I think thick-skinned, yeah. From an athletic perspective, is there something that you really have to cater to, given that he's in sports?
He's plant-based. So I take into a lot of things go into planning his food in regards to nutrient density, the calories, inflammation reduction, all types of those things. And I was caught off guard because I didn't realize that this client was plant-based when I said yes. I had already thought about all these things in my mind that I was like, oh, I'm going to feed him this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm so excited. And then it's like he eats plants. I'm like, oh, well. And I thought back to when I had the cooking school and my chefs would come up to me and say, Chef, we have a vegan in the class. And I'd be like, why is there a vegan in a meat class?
In a meat class?
I'm like, just go get some more vegetables out of the refrigerator. We'll figure something out. And now I was like, oh, okay. So, plants and okay.
What's the line of thought behind it? I mean, I watched, what is it called? I think the documentary, it's called Game Changer, where they're kind of honing in that supposedly the athletic performance goes up. Is that why he's doing it?
Mm-hmm. I can only, I would say yes. I mean, we didn't sit down and really talk about that other than it just makes him feel lighter and more in tune with what's going on, and for him, he has more energy. But we don't get to sit down and really chat about that, which for me has been a challenge because you kind of want to know, how do you feel?
Yeah, you would probably like to have immediate feedback and like, hey, we had this meal and this has been the perceived energy level in training.
Yeah, perceived energy level, or I ended up feeling sluggish, or I felt gassy. I don't know, but what happened? How do you feel? So that for this role, that's a challenge. I think for any role, not having immediate feedback in whatever we do can be a challenge, right?
I wonder if there's an app that you could
people want to know that they do
could use to collect feedback, because I feel like these days everybody uses their phone a lot, and what they don't want is maybe talk to us, and it's kind of like out of the way. But let's say they have the meal, then they go about their day. I'm pretty sure if the feedback might be on their phone, there would be something like, hey, performance was up, or so you could average it, and the app could possibly even track it for you, and you could look at it over a month and really seem like, okay. And you, on the other end, you can keep track of what you're actually, in terms of the menu, what were you feeding, and maybe you see a correlation.
Are you going to design the app?
I feel like that already exists. I feel like we just have to find it. And there's so many food apps. We were using one app.
There are, actually.
I mean, that was more, we were doing the nutritions, and I had to weigh out all of the food, which for me was a bit...
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's not the most enjoyable part of cooking, to weigh out everything that goes on the plate.
It can be daunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it
then
can be daunting. Luckily,
had to put it all in an app, and then they were reviewing it against basically the blood tests and the weight loss. So that was kind of the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will look into that. I mean, I'll see what's out there. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, maybe it helps. I mean, I've faced the same challenges. Sometimes you don't get the feedback you want, and I also understand that they don't want to get into the weeds on that every day. But for us, it's maybe it's like the pinnacle of the day, serving that meal, and for them, it's just another motion in the day. So they're like, yeah, I don't want to give you my time and my mental space right now, talking over that plate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It's you're coming at it from two. That was the way that you expressed that is, for us it's the pinnacle of our day, possibly, and for them it's like, okay, and now I'm off to whatever, and you're sort of going, I
mean, especially if let's say we put in the effort and we go to the farmer's market and we plan it all out and everything is leading basically to that. And then, as we both experienced at times, and then you're kind of like left hanging without any feedback whatsoever, maybe. And then next day begins.
Right. It can be very disheartening. I mean, particularly, and there's all types of different chefs and where we get our, where we put our passions or where we get our motivation from or the excitement to keep doing what we do. For me, it really is probably because of having been at the cooking school and even with the family in the beginning, is I could see immediate gratification. Like when you see someone's expression, you're like, or you're with them, like again with the cooking school or even the previous family, the kids might be in the kitchen with me doing stuff, and you're sharing knowledge, not just the food on the plate, but how come you did that, or what's going on here, and you see their eyes light up, adult or kid. That for me is like gold. And that's what fuels my passion, that and the fact that I get to work with really great ingredients. I'm like,
that's
yay,
one of the things,
that's amazing.
That's one of the things that originally attracted to go private too, is there was more feedback. That's something I really lacked in the restaurant, because you're just like, I mean, I kind of like to be tucked away during my work day, but what I didn't like is that basically you don't perceive anything from what's coming from the guest. And I mean, maybe the waiter comes in and says, oh, the client says thank you, and that's about it, But once I started cooking in people's homes, especially maybe more on a party base, they were so appreciative, and it was like such a cool experience to see people being happy. And I mean, I think it also originally started for me at home, doing that around the holidays and really putting up a feast, and that's then when I started doing that for private clients, and it was just like a completely different atmosphere and a sense of acknowledgement around that compared to working in a restaurant where you literally, you go back in the basement, change, and then you walk back out the back door close to the trash.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember actually my first restaurant gig, and when I was still in cooking school, and we walked in at between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning and went downstairs and walked out at about 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, what just happened? But you don't get, I mean, until you're in a position where you could go, and I used to always go and check what was left on the plate. Like if people were clearing their plates, it was like I was like, yes. But yeah, this role right now doesn't have the acknowledgement that we're talking about, but previously, and to your point, when you're doing parties, that's a blast because the people are like, oh, and what's next? And or when I've done a number of the parties I do at certain homes, everybody ends up in the kitchen. It's like 80 people are trying to crush to get into the kitchen to go like, what was in that? And what's this? And how did, like, yay! So that is, it feeds your soul, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you're like, could you please move an inch so I can open the oven?
Like, I don't want to burn you. You need to just move for a second. But, I mean, people's fascination with the kitchen, sometimes it really surprises me because I did a dinner party. This was a couple years ago for a different client, and they used to do these retreats at their home every year. And so I would always come and do the retreats. I had done it for, I don't know, 8 years maybe. But the one time, the participants had their spouses there. And there was one woman in particular who, she just wanted to be in the kitchen. The guests just really wanted to be in the kitchen. And part of what we do also is you have to read the guests of your host, but you also have to read your host or hostess, right? And as much as that guest didn't want to be out in the other space, the hostess didn't want her in the kitchen. So you're trying, you have to, you have to navigate all those things without insulting the guest or being rude, but also with the nod towards your hostess that, no, I get it, I see you, I will finesse this back into the dining room or whatever it is. But that's part of, I think there's, and I think you had, I can't remember who it was, the gentleman who cooks for the soccer team.
Oh, yeah.
The chef, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry.
James.
But yes, James, you were speaking about, people wanting a Michelin star chef, or it's, I want a Michelin star chef, but does the client know what that really means? I think you had said, well, it means that, yes, I can do that, but you're going to have this one dish because I'm not surrounded by 15 people helping me put that all together. And then on the flip side is that there's some chefs that don't understand what it is to be in somebody's home. It's a totally different ball game, obviously, without stating the obvious, but clients might not want to see a restaurant line set up in their multi-million-dollar kitchen. And even in how you, again, going back to how you navigate their guests, etc., it takes a certain amount of awareness, and then I think for me it's that I have a hospitality background, so that helps navigate those things in regards to personalities or situations that arise or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest distinctions is that when we are a chef in a restaurant, we are creating our experience for them, and in the house we're creating their experience for them.
Yes, that's a very eloquent way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, and that they're not looking necessarily for
that.
our expression in their house. It's more so, we're just their expression in their house, ideally.
Right. It's highlighting their expression in their house, which can be it can be it can be a challenge. I I had a client ask me to make something with an ingredient that I just did not. I couldn't bring myself to. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, and I
What was
was
the ingredient?
lamenting to another chef, someone who I can't say it. It was Velveeta cheese, and I'm like, it's not even real food. I can't. I just don't. And in my process of telling my woes, the chef that I was speaking to was someone who had actually worked with me, under me for a while, and she's like, "Chef, you just need to give the people what they want." And I was like, who told you that? And she goes, you did. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, that came back to roost. But to your point, it's not our expression in their house; it's their expression that we're participating in their house, creating it in their house. So I used the Velveeta, and then I went and figured out a hack for it so that I could do something different.
What's the hack?
But it is, we're there.
What's the hack around it? That made it work all.
Oh, I can't share secrets like that.
Okay, we got to go off the record here for a second.
Yeah.
But this secret hacks.
It was pretty funny. Secret hack. Nothing's secret anymore, actually. You can Google everything.
Yeah, I mean, that changed the industry, I think, a lot. When I first started, half of the bride of a chef was the recipe repertoire that they kind of came with, which you really only had if you worked in certain restaurants,
right,
or you were exposed to certain chefs. Like, otherwise you wouldn't have access to them. Mm-hmm. And these days, I mean, literally just a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking to a private chef, and he sent me this online drive that is like the craziest chef book collection that I've ever seen. It has like all of the master chefs books in PDFs, just like this, on one drive.
Oh.
And that's like unthinkable. Like, just 20 years ago, you would have had the massive collection of books, all $100 each. Then you would have like multiple booklets of your own recipes that you carefully collected over the years. And now it's all on Google. I mean, there's still some.
I still have a closet.
You get like 98%.
I still have a closet full of those books.
Yeah.
And I have a closet of those books, and I have a storage container of all my, notes from way back when. But I mean, I still open up a book and peruse through it because I just love doing that. I had a great aunt who used to collect cookbooks for me. I think I have one from like 1838 or something, which is crazy.
I bet the portion size is 1/3 of
so I'll still
what
grab
it is
them
today in that book.
Actually, that book, I have it wrapped up somewhere because it's starting to lose the binding and whatever. But actually, there's a chapter in there on frying, and that it's not considered healthy for you. It's like, interesting. Yeah,
well, they knew that 200 years ago.
Yeah, so I still peruse. Well, they knew. I mean, I try to stay on top of a lot of things in the plant world or the sports nutrition world, not necessarily supplements or anything like that, but in whole food type stuff. And so that led me to take a class, a plant-based nutrition class. And some of the findings in there, it just was, I was shocked because there's things that we've known for a very, 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 very long time that we don't adhere to because the medical industry doesn't view food as medicine. But I mean, countless countries and cultures have used food as medicine for centuries.
I think there's two parts to it.
So I always find all that stuff amazing.
I think there's two parts to it. One is, it's not popular with the patients that the patient has to change something. Like the patient wants the
That's
easy
true.
fix, which usually is a pill or a treatment that's being done to them. Like there's, and I've spoken about that with my sister, who's a doctor, at length. Like most don't want to go through a lifestyle change. That's just the reality of it. And they don't want to change their diet, and they don't want to change their habits, and they don't want to do the 10,000 steps in a day. If you can offer them a pill, they'll take that any day of the week. Probably 95% of the people. And then the pharma industry, I guess,
so
is very happy
disheartening.
about that because they're like, well, you could just eat whole foods and be healthy. And, you walk another 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day and literally 80% of your ailments will be taken care of. But it's fine. You might as well stay seated in your chair, eat all the crap you get down the road and take out pills.
It's, that part is all a vicious, to me, it's a vicious cycle. So I try in my small way when I, chat with people or when I'm cooking for people or whatever to educate in a very minute, unforceful way.
Well, at best we can be inspiring. Everything else doesn't go well.
Right. Yeah, it's it just particularly with what's happened in the last 2 years now, going on 3 years. It just I'm amazed at lessons that were learned and how quickly they were unlearned. And I had hoped that the pandemic would have moved us forward in a lot of different ways, but it seems like we learn a lesson and we take 10 steps back.
But looking at kind of the human history, I feel like we've learned many lessons 1,000 times over the generations, and we keep forgetting. We're very, very our progress compared to maybe the time spent on things is very minuscule. I think. That's kind of, for example, reading books that have been written 2,000 or maybe over 2,000 years ago. The human condition hasn't changed. Like it's really only the circumstances which we operate in that have changed. But if you boil it down to kind of what's going on in our body and our mind, that has barely changed in all of those millennia.
We're living longer, but yes, those things we sometimes I just sit and I'm like, wow, I don't even know, like, where to go with those things, because I feel like we're always looking for answers, but the answers they've been, the questions were asked and the answers were given, and you've just decided that it's not relevant anymore.
Yeah. That's why, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Tim Ferriss who a couple of years ago, he decided not to read any newly printed books. So he was like, that kind of took a large chunk of published or newly published books off his shelf, and then he could focus in on the crates. And that, I think that actually works well. Like if there is a book that stood out maybe for 2,000 years or more, or maybe the last couple hundred years, is probably a lot more worthwhile to read than the latest New York Times best.
Probably, yes. It stood the test of time,
Yeah.
right? I try to, we have family cottages in Michigan. And so this year I went for a month. And what's great up there is there's no TV, at least in our place, there's no TV. And I tried to be totally disconnected from social media, etc. And it felt so, there's a part of me that felt really, I'm not paying attention to the news. And then there's another part that was like, I'm not paying attention to the news. This is great. Felt very up in little rural Michigan. I'm like, yay, I'm queen of the world.
News are just as cyclical. So a couple of months ago, I was sitting on the couch with my mom, and I was watching something. It was like a flashback show from the 80s, and you look what happened in the 80s. And I felt like I'm watching the news today. It was like about Russian conflict and all kinds of things. And I'm like, so they were talking about nuclear power plants, and they were talking about Russia and, potential nuclear threats and all of those things. And I'm like, wait, we've been here before. And that's the thing. We know, okay, the generation that contemplated on the issue is gone. And then the next generation barely still remembers, but the next one for sure forgot.
Right, which is from my perspective, that's terrifying. That we don't encourage. Actually, even in one sense that we're trying to rewrite history to some degree, is terrifying, because it should be, let us learn from history, tell the stories through a new lens, being this is the truth of what happened, instead of erasing them, because we'll just go through it all over again.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
It does.
Well,
it's actually, that's sort of, if you think about it, that what's interesting in the kitchen is the lessons that you learn, they stay with you. When you've been burned, you know what that feels like. You know you don't want to be burned again. When the water boils, you know what it looks like when it's going to boil. When you smell something burning, guess what? It's burning. Yeah. Those things don't change.
Yeah, even if you hear certain things, you know what to make of it.
Well, yes. I call that the orchestra of the kitchen, because you can, a lot of times you can hear it before it actually happens. And maybe that's why, again, for me, that's why my happy place is in the kitchen, because its foundation. You learn new things. That's what's a blast. But certain things always stay the same. Water's going to boil at, this is going to burn at,
water is water, salt is salt.
Right. Actually, I just had a conversation with someone about salt the other day. Salt is salt, but then you have all your gray salt, your pink salt, your green salt, your black salt.
Yeah, I was about to go there. You got your salt from the UK, you get the other salt from Pakistan, and the other one from the Alps, and all the kinds of directions.
It's we used to go down to San Felipe in Mexico, and lo and behold, they have salt from the Sea of Cortez.
There you go.
There you go. We're all in the wrong business. We need to be in the salt business. Salt or water.
Sometimes I feel that way. I was flying over Reykjavik the other day, and they were selling small salt jars. I think it was almost $15 for, I don't remember how many ounces, but it wasn't big. And some of them were like with herbs, and some of them were like considered like lava salt. So it was like black, which might be a little bit more interesting. But the other one just looked like Icelandic salt, and I'm like, okay, I understand the process how you make that. It's probably you've probably got an amazing profit margin on these salts here.
Yeah. It's well, I mean, salt used to be what they measured your wealth in, right?
I mean that's the same actually for sugar. Sugar used to be very highly priced because they didn't know how. I mean, I guess the same is true for anything that is rare for some time. Then people figure out how to extract it, and the price plummets.
So can I ask
So
you
what
a
are the
question?
latest trends in the I was just about to ask, what are the latest trends in the nutritional vegan section, since you seem to have an eye on that?
Well, trends are, I mean, there's things I don't personally support, but obviously all the plant-based fake meats and fake chicken and
For me, that's straight up garbage.
it's I don't use them. I don't advocate that, and it's again, it goes back to I'm going to step away one quick second to turn my oven on. If you want people to stop eating meat, why advocate eating fake meat and perpetuate that taste? And actually, it's not that I want people to stop eating meat. What would be great is if we would understand that it's not the meat that's bad, it's how we consume it. You know, this type of steak instead of that, and where we're purchasing it from. No more, industrial farming needs to go bye-bye. It's not good for the animals. It's not good for the planet. It's not good for us. So any of those things, I just look at them, and every once in a while I'll pick one up to try. You have to try, right? And like you said, I'm like,
I don't know. When I look at the ingredients list, I don't want to try.
No, and I mean, you can taste the vital wheat gluten and the this and the that, and it's all this oil comes out of it, and I don't understand. It just is not my.
I think now there is enough, or there's a large volume of science around that, and they have some gigantic studies that eating real food is how it works. Just real food, and then whatever suits your religion or your beliefs or your personal preferences, you can dial it in a little bit more or go. But I think it boils down to eating real food and just being sensitive to how your body feels.
Right, eating real whole foods. Just even.
And I think we've gotten quite far away from what food used to be, and I originally didn't look at it this way. Here in Europe, I never felt going to the supermarket that food wasn't good for me as such. I thought it's fine, they're selling it, it's fine. But once I moved to the US, I was a little like, oh wait, this just doesn't look real, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't remind me of food even. And then I was like, I need to educate myself a lot more around what is actually not just edible, but what nourishes me.
What nourishes you? Well, I drove across the United States from San Francisco to Michigan this summer, and I was positive I was going to find these little cute places that I could, like a roadside place or whatever, and I made the mistake of taking the interstate. Don't ever take the interstate because as awesome as it is that we have that system, all these little towns are just pop-ups of Arby's, McDonald's, Burger King, I mean, in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of nowhere. I was just like, I'm like, what? I'm speechless. I'm like, what? No wonder why. I mean, our health rate is so poor, and I would get it. I'd pull into a little town, and I check out the people, and I'd be like, when's the last time you had a piece of lettuce? Um, but it was funny. I did stay in this one town. I can't recall the name of it now, but I pulled into the hotel, and I was like, and I was traveling with my dog, so that changes everything. You're on the interstate, and you have a pet. You're not staying at the Ritz-Carlton. You're not even staying at a Motel 6, possibly. So I pulled in, and it was a hotel that looked like a Western type hotel, and it had a saloon next to it. So I thought, well, there's nothing else. There's a saloon, thank goodness. And I had a pretty rough day driving. So I pulled in, we got checked in. I looked at the place. I was like, all right, well, it's only one night. I'll survive. And I asked the ladies about the saloon next door. And they're like, oh, it's great. It's great. I'm like, will they let me sit outside with the dog? Oh, yeah. I go to the saloon and I walk in and they introduce themselves, the two gals, Maddie and Jenny. And she's like, are you Jayne? I'm like, yes, hi. Like, we'll seat you outside, et cetera, et cetera. Could not have been nicer. And I ordered a burger and I was dying for a salad. So I was like, I'm just gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna have a salad. And she's like, what kind of dressing? And I'm like, I'll have blue cheese. I'm like, I don't know why I did that. But it came out, and it had taken a little while. It came out, and the burger was okay. It was a little overcooked. I like mine medium rare. But the salad was gorgeous. I mean, a couple things I wouldn't put in there, like the little shredded cheddar thingies. But the lettuce was nice. I tasted the blue cheese, and I turned on, like, excuse me, Jenny, come here. I'm like, do you guys make your own blue cheese dressing? She's like, how did you know that? I'm like, it's delicious. She's like, how did you know that? I'm like, well, I do this for a living. She's like, well, that's why it took a while, because Chris, the chef, had to make fresh blue cheese dressing. I'm like, well, this just made my drive across the country. It was awesome. That and fresh, crisp lettuce. I was like, wow, amazing. But that doesn't happen in a lot of places.
You didn't expect that, and I also didn't expect that. Where I thought you would go in the opposite direction of the.
Oh, I know.
You're like leading up to the food desert.
No, that was the one. That was the one place, and there was another place I stopped. There was a restaurant that I had known about. A friend had stopped, and someone else had stopped outside of Nevada. It was I can't remember what type of restaurant it is now, but I was going there no matter what. I was going there. I wanted to taste, et cetera, et cetera. And that salad I had in the middle of nowhere far outshined. Like, come on. I actually stopped here specifically to come to this restaurant. But it's all based on location and what you have access to, and or what people are willing, as a chef or cook, willing to settle for. I would always hopefully be I'm not settling, I'm not using that product. I will grow it myself. I will search it out, etc. But that I won't use that. And other people allow themselves to be bound by the circumstances that they find themselves in. We were on a cruise, a small cruise boat in Greece, and I expected, it was only like 50 passengers, small, 30 passengers plus the crew or whatever, and I was expecting some pretty nice stuff, and you could tell, yes, And I mean, the ports that we went, I was dying. I was like, oh my gosh, the tomatoes in Sardinia. Oh my goodness, they were amazing. Anyway, you could tell immediately on the boat that they had a corporate box, and that chef wasn't stepping out of that corporate box. I'm like, we're in the Greek islands. Why are you giving me Greek yogurt that's in a Dannon cup? Like, there's amazing Greek yogurt here. All you have to do is, when we're in ports, go get a tub. I mean, and just to showcase here or there, those tomatoes were, they were amazing. And I live in the Bay Area. We have great tomatoes. The Midwest has great tomatoes. But you could tell it was a box, and that chef was not stepping outside of that box. I would be stepping outside of the box. So.
Well, you might have to leave the boat in that case.
Yeah. Well, we stopped at port. We stopped at 3 or 4, 5 ports, and each port had something, that it was known for. So why wouldn't you want to, even if you did just a little bit, to share with people before they disembark, so that they knew what to expect when they went to a restaurant, right? This is what moussaka looks like, or this is what this might be, or you might want to taste this.
I feel like there's always incentive structure when you follow why certain things are a certain way, and
of course
I'm sure there was something here that where the chef felt like we don't have to go there.
We don't have to go there. No, I agree with you. It just is, but there are, again, maybe they would have kicked me off the boat then, but I would have been like, I'm going to go get those tomatoes. Yeah, I guess there's just always you can go outside the box without bringing financial distress. You just have to be creative.
Yeah. I can't speak for that particular chef, but
No, of course not. No,
I know why sometimes people don't go the extra mile, and maybe it's just wasn't acknowledged, or he felt that it wasn't acknowledged. I don't know, maybe. Well,
that could, yeah. It's that's what I said when I prefaced it. Is you could tell that there was a corporate box, so he was hemmed. He and his team were hemmed in by that corporate box. And as a food enthusiast, you always hope that you'd be like, I'm not going to, I got to break out of this box in a little way. But
Well, Jayne, this was really, really lovely. Thank you so much for taking the time. We're actually, we're already quite deep into it. Where can people connect with you?
Yes, this was lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, what was your question?
Where can people connect with you if anybody would like to connect with you? Maybe LinkedIn or Instagram or something?
I'm on LinkedIn and at Chef Jayne on Instagram.
Nice. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy your time with your family in Germany.
Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.